What's up, guys? I know I start off every episode saying I'm really excited about this episode, but I am really excited about this episode. And the reason being is we got a little bit of a different format here. You see, a couple days ago, I put out an FAQ over my social media channel just asking for fitness and nutrition questions. And you guys did just that. We got about 25 questions. So today what you'll be hearing is part 1 of us answering your questions. And we're going to follow it up with a part 2 very, very soon. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as we did. My name is Michael Suna. His name is Rob Silver, alongside registered dietitian Erik Bustillo, and this is the 8-9 Project. All right, what's up, guys? So here we are today with Rob Silver and Erik Bustillo. What's up, Rob?
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
It's going well, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Well, we have a guest for the first time today, which will hopefully be a very permanent guest here, not only in our facility, but on our podcast. Erik Bustillo. What's up, Erik?
Everything's good. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, man.
Yeah.
Erik, let's kick this off. So today we're going to do a rant, and our audience already knows that we do quickies, which are 15 to 20 minutes, and then we do rants that are somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes. So I'm pretty sure we're probably going to use up that whole time, 60 to 90 minutes, when it comes to these questions. So our audience knows what we did this past week on my Instagram. I posted a Q&A type thing, basically said send in your questions for Erik, Rob, and myself revolving nutrition and supplementation, which is pretty much all that we got. There's a couple of them on how we get swole, but we'll talk about that later on. And we got about 15 questions, so we're going to kick this off. But before we do, Erik, if you could give us just a quick little bio, if you will, a history about yourself. What's your background? Where you from? And then what's your experience in this field and where you're at now? What you're doing for your livelihood?
Cool. My name is Erik Bustillo. I'm 6'1". I like long walks on the beach.
Very sexy.
I was born and raised in Miami. Went to school at FIU, Proud Panther, Florida International University. I studied dietetics and nutrition there. Just a quick side note: a dietitian and a nutritionist are not the same thing. To be a registered dietitian, you have to go through university schooling, supervised internship. You go through the internship and then take your boards in the end, just like nurses or doctors or whoever gets some kind of a license and accredited certification. You have to take a big test in the end, and not like the local, hey, I did an online cert and I'm a nutritionist, let me be your health coach. Not to discredit them, but in defense of RDs, you have to go to school and go through this rigorous schoolwork and pass your boards hopefully the first time, and then you're a registered dietitian.
That's good to know.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, yeah, I'm a nutritionist.
Absolutely.
And that's a much easier word to understand than dietitian. I had no idea what a dietitian was until my brother planted the seed, and he was like, why don't you become a registered dietitian? At first I was like, what the heck is a registered dietitian? And then I did some investigating, and then it's a wrap from there. So,
but I don't think a lot of people know that. I think that it goes hand in hand. When they say nutritionist or registered dietitian, they think it's the same level of experience in education, but it's not.
At all. Okay. It's not the exact same thing. Now, like I said, not to discredit people who are either health coaches or they're just personal trainers that know about nutrition. Like, cool, like about it, and maybe you have a lot of firsthand experience. And one thing, as I'm sure the three of us would agree with, is experience goes such a long way. If anything, it kind of like trumps everything else to an extent. And people with a lot of experience will help somebody lose weight, and to that person that lost weight, they're a miracle worker. But it still doesn't mean that they're technically allowed to. So in the state of Florida, to give one-on-one nutrition consultations and an actual meal plan, if you will, and go into details with all that stuff and medical nutrition therapy, you have to be a registered dietitian.
Yeah, there are legal differences between the two on what is the general scope and practice of a registered dietitian versus someone who's not. And it's not a straight line. It is actually murky. And I know there is ongoing lawsuits where the registered dietitian board and lawyers for other people are currently trying to define what is, what are registered dietitians allowed to say that other people are not allowed to say. And it's almost a freedom of speech issue with work, what is defined as professional speak. There's a more legal term for that, but it's ongoing. It is interesting.
Yeah, and then it's kind of crazy because now you risk, okay, this person is giving nutrition advice, and maybe they know or maybe they don't know that this person has chronic kidney disease.
Yep.
And now what happens, right? So
luckily we have an RD here now that's going to help us answer these questions.
Yep.
So we're excited.
So just to kind of fast forward through that, I've been working in the industry for quite a few years now, and I'm certified in sports nutrition. I'm certified in personal training as well. I like to go into detail about the science of the individual. So looking at things like blood work or different metabolic testing to help me better prescribe nutrition or a fitness lifestyle for the individual. And specializing in supplementation, I have a lot of experience in research and clinical studies, medical nutrition therapy, weight loss, weight gain, athletes, performance, disease control. I mean, you name it. I can probably go on for days talking about all that stuff.
And you're also a certified personal trainer?
I am.
As well?
Yeah, through the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and certified in sports nutrition through the International Society of Sports Nutrition.
And you work with the FIU football team?
I worked with FIU football for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And it was fun. It gives you a lot of perspective on trying to help that college age individual. In this case, it was college age males from different backgrounds. Some come from either a more affluent background, some come from more so inner city background, and at the same time looking at how the budget of a school impacts it. Now, not to discredit FIU in any way, but the budget doesn't match, let's say, Alabama's budget.
Probably didn't match what we had at UM for their nutrition programs.
Yeah. So if you think about that, it's like, okay, what can I recommend to these guys, and how can I help them understand? And this could be a whole podcast on its own. Mm-hmm. How can I help them understand? All right, you want to use that money that's allotted to you for optimal nutrition purchases, as opposed to the tattoo that you want, right? And some of the guys were like, "Yeah, whatever you tell me, I'm gonna do." Other guys were like, "Yeah, whatever, bro."
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting because I was one of those kids between the ages of 18 and 22, and it was pretty much just gain weight and I don't care how you did it. And we did not have a nutritionist or a registered dietitian on board to kind of help guide us. It was basically, here is CVI, which was our dorms that we lived in, and open cafeteria, and just eat as much as you possibly can if that's what your goal is. But talk about macros back then. I didn't know. I knew about counting calories. I was eating 7,200 calories a day, but I wasn't counting macros. I wasn't on that path, and I wasn't, I didn't care about anything that we talk about these days when it comes to gluten or vegetable oils or so on and so forth. It was just eat. I would set my alarm at 3 o'clock in the morning to have Oreos and a weight gainer shake just to put on weight. But we didn't have anybody guiding us on like, maybe you're doing it wrong. Maybe you don't want to eat all that fat or so on and so forth, or your protein is a little bit under what you're weighing right now. But so that's something that I'm really interested in, and I think a lot of the subjects that we talk about could be a whole podcast. So we'll push. That's for sure. We'll push right on through this. So what do you do nowadays? You provide services to personal clients. You're now coming on board with us here at the gym, Training 9. Yeah,
I do. Working for myself now. It's essentially more of like a concierge nutrition, if you will, where I have my one-on-one patients, clients. I'll do some personal training as well. But, there's a lab that I work with that I can look at some blood work, very detailed stuff from, different, let's say, hormones or cardiometabolic markers, micronutrient deficiencies. And I use a machine called an InBody to measure body fat and muscle mass, and just guiding and coaching individuals there, and also doing a lot of lectures and presentations and whatnot. So staying pretty busy.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone has any questions on any of that, submit it to us, either Mike or the Train 89. And how do people get a hold of you, Erik?
They could reach me via social media. That's a pretty easy one, and it's at Erik Bustillo, ErikBustillo. And there's also email, which is Erik the Dietitian @gmail.com. That's Erik the Dietitian, Dietitian gmail.com.
Okay. And we'll put all that in the show details and stuff like
Awesome.
that on how to get a hold of you. So, Rob, you ready to jump right into it?
Yes.
Okay,
Let's go into this.
I'm going to kick off with a question that I had on one of the video posts that I had up there, and it was from a female, and she said, "Is how does someone figure out their calories / macros per day?" So I'm sure there's a ton of different formulas that vary at slight levels. How would somebody general just try to figure out, okay, this is how many calories I need, and this is the macronutrient breakdown that I would use?
So generally speaking, the easiest way, if you wanted to do it for yourself, you can just go onto Google and you can look up, how many calories should I eat in a day. You can look up different equations, things like the Harris-Benedict equation. There's the Mifflin-St. Jeor, which over time they've found that that's potentially the closest one to getting BMR, which is basal metabolic rate. So for those of you that don't know, that's how many calories you burn just existing in a day. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you explain why some of those are more accurate than others? Because it's some of the variables that they take in change. Some equations just take your age and your weight. Some factor in some other variables. So you want to look for equations that use.
Yeah. So some of them will look at things like lean body mass, and it's interesting because Mifflin-St. Jeor, that one, it was developed. I want to say it was in the early 1900s, if I'm not mistaken. And even to this day, they still utilize it as one of the top ones to calculate things like BMR.
Which lean body mass is so important when you're trying to calculate BMR, resting metabolic rate, because that is basically what you're doing is you're figuring out your fat mass. And then because we don't count that when we're figuring out our resting metabolic rate, you throw out your fat mass, and then it's the rest of your body, the part of your body that is lean, and that's what we're doing to figure out how many calories you're burning in a day. So understanding how many pounds of your body is fat is important for this.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Now, it also comes back to I guess we can say the practicality of everything, because, yeah, I recently got the InBody to be able to measure body fat and muscle mass. And to your point, if we have muscle mass or fat mass, right, we can figure one or the other out, then that allows us to be much more accurate with recommendations. But now if somebody maybe can't afford to do the InBody or the DEXA or whatever it is, that's where something like the Mifflin-St. Jeor would be beneficial, because it doesn't factor in your lean body mass. It's basically a calculation that uses height in centimeters, weight in kilograms, and then different factors that essentially is a part of the equation, like multiplying by this number, subtracting by that number, and it gives you a BMR. When you have the lean body mass, you can get a little bit more accurate, because now you know what's muscle and what's fat, and then that obviously helps as far as the metabolic activity and understanding how many calories are being burned. So it really depends what we have access to. So going back to answer her question, I would say the easy route, go online and find one. If anything, Googling Mifflin-St. Jeor, and that's Mifflin, Mifflin, Saint, St, and then Jeor is Jeor, if I'm not mistaken, and doing it from there. Now, if you can get a little bit more accurate, like working with a professional or something along those lines, then, by all means,
use one instead.
Most definitely.
So it would behoove somebody, if they have the means and the finances in order to hire a registered dietitian, it'll behoove them to go that route as opposed to doing online calculations, because there's so many other factors that RD could take into consideration to give them a more accurate number, along with the guidance and coaching to get them there, like how to actually apply this, because this is another obstacle that a lot of these participants find is, okay, now I know my numbers, now what? What's the next step? Like the actual application of weighing and measuring their food in order to get to it. Then the subsequent questions of how many times a day and when should I eat and so on. So this is why it's so important to have a registered dietitian. Again, alluding to your point, there's levels to this. So somebody that's never actually followed some sort of quote-unquote diet, okay, step one is just figure out your numbers and do the best that you can. And maybe 90 days from now, when you figure that out, maybe now it's time to take the next step. When you figured out how important this is, or you're not seeing the results you wanted, now maybe reaching out to a registered dietitian, sitting down with them and getting the calculations, which leads me to my next question. Could you name some of the variables or what it is that you do in your practice as opposed to somebody going online? So let's pretend, hypothetically speaking, Jill Smith went on, she got her calculations, she did it for 90 days, she lost a little bit of weight because now instead of eating 4,000 calories, she realized that she's only supposed to eat 2,200. She comes and sits with you. Can you kind of give me just an overview scope of what it is that you would do to Jill?
Oh yeah, I would look at things like, again, assuming that she is able to, looking at blood work is going to be an important factor. Looking for certain deficiencies, and this is even more so from not just body composition and weight loss, but also from overall health. I want to look and see, okay, is there anything from a medical nutrition therapy standpoint that I should be recommending? Less fat, more fat, are there certain genetic markers and those things? I'll also go ahead and look at their percentage body fat and muscle mass. And then, of course, working with a professional gives you the right guidance in the sense of making changes when necessary. So sometimes it might be something like, all right, it's been a couple of months and we haven't changed the numbers, but we're still reaping the benefits. We're still seeing the results. I'm a firm believer of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. And then when it does, quote unquote, break, how do we fix it and what changes can we make? So a lot of it is assessing. As time goes by, as certain bumps in the road happen and whatnot, knowing what to do and when to make certain changes, change their caloric needs, changing their macronutrient numbers, adjusting it. And another thing that's important to understand is when you work with a professional, they should be able to tailor it to you in a way where we know that, and I'm going to use this as an example, we know that for fat loss, and that tends to be the goal for a lot of people, we shouldn't overconsume calories. So first and foremost, burn more than what you consume. The next important factor is going to be how much protein are you consuming. You want to make sure you're getting the optimal amount of protein. After that, it's kind of like the carbs and the fat don't matter from a body composition standpoint, right? And of course, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of the individual and maybe someone responds better or worse to carbs or fats and all of that. But if we know that, let's say I know someone has a preference for carbs over fat, I want to make sure that their caloric number for the day is where it should be. I want to make sure that they're getting an optimal amount of protein without it getting to the point of discomfort, because now I also don't want to help breed some kind of food disorder. Right? Now, so it's important. These are the things that go into the registered, at least Erik, the dietitian's thought process, because I can't speak for all dietitians. So once I consider all of that, I'm like, okay, this man or woman prefers carbohydrates. Maybe I'll give them a little bit more carbs as opposed to fat, or vice versa. If they prefer fat, cool, go more on the fat route, preferably not too much saturated fat. This is kind of my psychology. And then maybe not too much of the carbohydrates. So a lot of it really is the individual. And I would say just with that alone, you're getting a lot from working with an individual as opposed to an individual professional, right? A registered dietitian, as opposed to just finding it online. But you could also figure it out on your own. But having somebody to help you out is always good,
And having someone to tell you that it's okay to enjoy foods that you like and help you with the portions there is going to be news that a lot of people might not be expecting. You're like, oh, it's okay for me to bias towards carbohydrates if that's what I like more, because if they're not psychologically happy, they're not going to follow this program and they're not going to be successful, right? You have to play into that, telling them, figuring out what their favorite foods are that's going to remind them of home over the holidays, but then maybe working with them on getting them variations of those foods that's going to be healthier is stuff there you can say, hey, that's fine, we can work that into your program, and they're going to feel good about it, and you're going to make sure that you're tracking the numbers to get them to where they need to be. So huge benefit there of working with someone that can provide that feedback for you.
Yeah, and it also helps the fact that I love Oreos and pizza, and I make sure all of my patients and clients know that it's okay to eat these quote-unquote bad foods, right? Side note, there's no such thing as bad foods. It's not, inherently bad for you. But at the same time, understanding that the poison's in the dosage. That's something, when I give presentations, I stress that out. I'm like, if I want you all to walk away with anything today, the poison's in the dosage.
Yeah. I feel like we could go on a podcast about everything that we talk about, and I'm kind of putting my foot on the brake here to move on from question to question. So I think that was a great start. Rob,
Yes.
do you have the next one for us?
Our next question, we're going to switch it up a little bit here. I'm cutting weight. Should I be on creatine?
More than likely, yes. And it depends on the dosage as well. If you're taking creatine, it should be creatine monohydrate. So whatever they tell you in the store, don't believe them. Just
Why?
Because creatine monohydrate, it's the most bang for your buck. And from my science background, it's the most studied and most effective. So if you're going to tell me take creatine hydrochloride or ethyl ester or whatever names they're going to be coming out with, not to say that they're bad, but I might as well go with the one that I know is pretty affordable and thousands of studies. Well, let me say hundreds just to be safe, but I'm pretty sure it's up in the thousands of studies have shown that creatine monohydrate has benefits. I mean, if anything, no effect, which we know that's not what the science shows, and there's much more plus to get out of it, right? More benefit.
Correct. With creatine monohydrate, it's not that the more processed, more manufactured, more quote-unquote efficient forms of creatine are not going to work. They just might not be work at the effectiveness that's worth the price tag.
Exactly.
So we know that creatine monohydrate is going to, the number one benefit of creatine that we know is improvements in strength and power, improvements in force output for power athletes.
Yeah.
My first question back at that individual is, why are you cutting weight?
For
Right?
sure.
Is it someone who's trying to lose weight, or is it someone who's trying to cut weight for a weight class sport? That's going to be a very different situation because creatine has that side effect of water retention. Right? We know that is an association of creatine, is that there will be water retention. If they're trying to dehydrate themselves as well to lose weight, that's an environment that I don't want to put any athlete in. Right? Because they're dehydrated, but then they're also taking a supplement that's going to take water away from some other sources. They might have some negative side effects there, but at the same point, if it's a wrestler, wrestling's all about power output. We think it's about endurance, it's about power output. So if you can safely lose weight without dehydrating yourself while maintaining some level of creatine supplementation to maintain power output, now you're going to have a better blast double when you need to go get that takedown in the second or third period versus if you didn't. So that's the huge question to me, is why are they trying to actually they cut weight versus lose weight, right?
Yeah, when somebody says
that makes me think wrestling, that makes me think weight class sport,
athlete, right.
Olympic
Right.
weightlifting,
Exactly.
which Olympic weightlifting, yeah, you could see it being that's a different, it is a weight class sport. You need to make your weight class. That's all about power output, right? So if you can take a supplement that improves power output, which would be creatine, why not? The why not would be, how much are you cutting weight? Do you know how to effectively cut weight? If you put on a sauna suit and go outside for a run in South Florida or go sit in a sauna, that's going to dehydrate you. I would not recommend taking a supplement such as creatine if that's how you're cutting weight.
And Rob, either of you could elaborate on this when you were talking about the actual mechanism of creatine. So can you just go over briefly, what does actually creatine do? You talk about pulling weight, but some of our audience members might not actually understand what creatine does.
Yeah, so creatine, if you listen to some of our prior podcasts, we've talked about what fuels muscle contractions, and on our shortest time scale, when we look at quote in the textbooks, 3 seconds or less, ATP adenosine triphosphate. Creatine can pair with phosphate to form creatine phosphate, which is a storage form of phosphate that will fuel indirectly exercise bouts lasting 3 to 15 seconds, a little bit longer, a little bit less, right? We're looking at textbook numbers there, textbook variables. But creatine allows our muscles to store this phosphate that we will then use for power output, for force production, right? So if we have more creatine, that means we're able to store more phosphate, more phosphagen, which means that we'll have a greater capacity of maintaining a higher power output, a higher force output, or lifting a heavier weight for longer, right? Instead of only lasting for 12 seconds, maybe we can last for 14 seconds, right? We're talking about lifting weights, not other stuff, guys. And not only is it the single effort, it is the repeatability, right? It's all about being able to do something once, twice, right? Think about being a wide receiver or a cornerback. You run the fly route the first time to tire the cornerback. You run it the second time to tire the cornerback, and then you do what looks like it's going to be a fly route, but then you do your post or you do your slant across the middle, and now you're open, and now you've just turned, you tired out the cornerback, and now you're open, scoring a touchdown. the repeatability of that. Creatine phosphate has the potential, or creatine as a supplement has the potential to improve that. So there are direct benefits in sports performance with our power sports with creatine supplementation. We know it works. The cutting weight part is what always gives me hesitancy because I've done that. I was a high school wrestler. I know what it's like to cut weight. It sucks. Mike, I don't know if you were cutting weight when you wrestled or...
No, I was gifted where I didn't have to cut weight. Yeah. But I saw those guys suffer through that.
It's not a good situation, and people do it not the right way, right? And you don't want to risk the body that way. Another thing here is when you take too much creatine, it gives you the shits, right? Especially if it's not dissolved. If you're taking too much creatine, it's going to cause stomach indigestion. I don't want any athlete walking on to, especially wrestlers wearing a singlet, walking onto the mat when they're worried about blowing out of their butt, right? That's completely different from sports performance, but it's all about sports performance in the sense that now you have that situation.
Yeah, and just to kind of tap on one of the things that you said two parts. You said you could add more weight and you could add more reps, and that ultimately leads to strength gains and hypertrophy. So the more weight that you could put on the bar and the more times you could perform it, the end result could be muscle hypertrophy if that's what you're looking for, or more strength. So that's the reason I jumped back on creatine 2 weeks ago. I'm back onto my weight gain phase now, especially now during the Miami winter. And I always use creatine in order to lift heavier, in order to build more muscle and more hypertrophy is the end goal here.
And I know I've had colleagues who said that when they were doing the nutrition, doing the post-workout smoothies for college football teams, they would dump creatine into the smoothie makers.
Yeah.
Right.
No, something else with creatine is that it's think of it as a cellular hydrator, right? So what it does is it helps people think that creatine is just water weight. Technically, they're right, but that's how muscles also grow, right? By keeping water in the muscle cells. So creatine helps out with that. So it could, in a way, potentially even help with hydration, and not on the oh man I'm so thirsty level, more from a cellular standpoint, muscular speaking. So when I have endurance athletes, I shouldn't take creatine because then I'm gonna get big. No, not really. You're not training to get big and you're not eating to get big. So going back to that original question, most definitely and I just jumped in to answer the question, but the first real question is, what are your goals, or why are you looking to do this? Then it's more about, okay, how can I adjust their nutrition, and can I keep them on the creatine? Because if I can, then I most definitely will. And from what we've seen as far as side effects of creatine, again, the individual is the individual. That we can never take it away. But people will say some ridiculous things like roid rage. I'm sorry, creatine is not a steroid.
No, that was a rumor in high school.
Yeah.
I remember is when someone started taking creatine, they were like, oh, he's going to get creatine roid rage.
Yeah. And people still say that. Like the media will put out a news
Moms
headline.
will say that.
Oh, for sure. Without a doubt.
And dads.
So you have roid rage. You have acne, baldness, you name it, right? The only proven side effect, in quotation marks, of creatine is weight gain. Why? Because it helps with putting on lean body mass. So you're gaining maybe a little bit of water into the cells and your muscles are growing in size. But that's not always the case, because I've had people lose weight who are taking creatine. We got to make sure that the diet is appropriate.
And the dosage.
Well, most definitely.
Dosage.
Like the loading phase, that's not...
Yeah.
You don't need to load on creatine unless you're trying to get as fast as possible results in the next week or two.
I load. I load only, one, I'm old school, and two, because I do want to saturate my muscles as quickly as possible. I'm a little impatient when it comes to that, so I do load. And then I go to my 5 grams.
What is your loading? How much?
15 to 20 grams a day.
Pretty standard, and then going down to that maintenance of 5 grams. And I've seen recommendations of 2 to 3 if your goals are not necessarily strength and power athlete, so endurance or just general health. 2 to 3 grams per day can have an impact.
Yeah, half to 1 teaspoon.
Which, if you don't like supplements, foods that are high in creatine are going to be your red meats.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't want to pin either of you against the wall, but just a very quick answer to this: if a person does not have a pre-existing condition, a kidney condition, kidney or liver, is creatine bad for them in the studies that you've read?
Nope.
This is what I get all the time, right? Oh, it's bad. Kidney damage, to hurt your kidneys, liver, no. Okay, so they don't have to worry about it unless they have some pre-existing condition.
Correct.
Excess protein. You'll probably find more research that supports excess protein having kidney or liver damage compared to creatine.
Copy. All right, Robert.
Our next question, sticking with the supplements, what is a good multivitamin for women? Something that provides some energy.
Okay, so I would ask them a question, and I would say, what is your goal? Again, I would ask them that as the first thing, first and foremost. Then, as far as an actual brand and all of that, there's not just one brand that I would swear by, right? So it's not just going to be, all right, you have to take this brand just because, X, Y, and Z. There are a few things that I would tell this individual to look for. One, if it is a woman, they do sell some that are tailored for women that might have some kind of iron supplementation in there as well. That's a very general women's supplement or women's mineral that
because
they should
of the menstrual cycle is
because
why
of the
women
menstrual
require why RDA is higher in women for iron.
Exactly.
And women are also less likely by population studies to eat red meat, so they don't consume as much iron in their diet naturally as men do, which is one of the reasons why women and iron supplementation is much more of a thing.
Yep. So then it would bring up another question. What's your age? Should I really be taking iron? Have you had recent blood work done? Just a quick response to that would be maybe taking some kind of a B complex or like a methylated B complex to help with energy, because that was the second part of the question. That could potentially help out with that. But if you're looking for a good multivitamin or just supplements in general, there are certain tags that you want to look for where it says something like GMP, good manufacturing practices, right? These are little labels or certificates or stamps of approval that you want to look for.
Which, Mike, when you had Formulex, what were some of those stamps of approval that you are aware of, not necessarily had on Formulex, but I know that you tried to have the
we went
purest
to
product.
GMP facility, GMP and FDA approved facility. So these facilities that we were making our product from, they had these certifications themselves.
Which, especially if you're being drug tested for some reason,
correct,
you need to do that because, as we'll touch on, the supplement industry is very unregulated.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, well, the supplement... Technically, the supplement industry is regulated, just much more loosely than pharmaceuticals. And because if you're looking at medications, pilot study, it's in phase 1, 2, whatever, it takes years for it to get, pushed through, and then, okay, it's accepted. With supplements, it's easier for it to get pushed through, and then you have other companies that might not practice the way that they should. It's harder for the FDA to be able to track down these companies that are putting sugar inside of a supplement that should be, I don't know, iron or whatever supplement in this case. So it is regulated, but much more loosely. Now that's why you want let's say the BSCG certification, Bad Substance Control Group, NSF Safe for Sport, Informed Choice, the GMP, USP. These are all different stamps of approval that can help you make a more conscientious choice as far as what supplements you should be taking. And then we would get down into the nitty-gritty of, okay, what does it actually contain? The nice thing about a general multivitamin, multimineral is that it covers a broad spectrum. And for going back to this individual's question, is there a vitamin D deficiency? Right? Is there anemia present? Do you have some kind of methylation issue, right? That's a genetic factor that doesn't allow the body to process what would be considered normal folate, one of the B vitamins, and that could affect your energy level. So it goes, with nutrition, it's never a black or white answer. There's shades of gray pretty much always and forever. But those are some things that I would recommend to look at. And then, when in doubt, find at least one of those stamps of approval on a multivitamin, and then just go ahead and buy that one.
Great answer.
Sticking with the supplement theme here, it's what people's questions tend to be, because inherently we see that people are looking for a quick fix to a lot of things, but nothing wrong. Keep the supplement questions coming because it gives us good material, good content here. What do I take for knee pain?
Knee pain. See a doctor, first and foremost. See what it is that is bothering you. See if they could come down to the root cause of it. And maybe I did this lift or I hit it or an injury from when I was a kid. As far as supplements go, taking something like the type 2 collagen, it could be beneficial. Glucosamine could potentially be beneficial. At worst, it's going to do nothing. At best, it might help alleviate some pain or help with some movement. So glucosamine, MSM, and chondroitin, sometimes they're sold all together. But that wouldn't be a bad combination along with the type 2 collagen. From a nutritional standpoint, we have to also evaluate, are you overweight? Because that could potentially cause it. Is there enough muscle mass supporting that area? Working with an exercise specialist or an exercise physiologist or a really good personal trainer or a strength coach that can help assess, or even a physical therapist, obviously, then maybe they could assess and see, all right, you're moving wrong. You need different shoes, things along those lines. But from a supplement standpoint, I would say the type 2 collagen, glucosamine, MSM, and chondroitin, and
it could be an inflammation issue. If they go to the doctor and they're like, listen, your knee's intact, it just could be inflammation, or you have some kind of itis going on. Reduction of inflammation. Does fish oil help with that?
Fish oil, it wouldn't hurt to take it.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how much it would help as far as alleviating pain, but fish oil is an anti-inflammatory with the omega-3s that are consumed with the omega-3 supplementation. Something else to consider that might also help is a curcumin or a turmeric supplement that might potentially help with that too.
Natural anti-inflammatories.
Exactly. And that, I saw a study once that it showed individuals respond as well as if they were taking an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, like Advil, if you will, or ibuprofen. And then, of course, you also can potentially try some kind of, like a CBD supplement to see if that could help, right? I don't know of too many studies on it. I know of anecdotal, meaning somebody tried it and it changed their life. Mm-hmm. I mean,
CBD oil, not the more natural product.
Right. Yeah, like
not the inhalation product.
Correct.
What about anything with like autoimmune issues? Like, if the client has autoimmune issues related to their diet, related to a high inflammatory food diet, compared with some genetic anti or autoimmune issues? I mean, there's rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease. There is that potential for it to be related to the situation here.
Sure, yeah. In those instances, one of the most important factors is ensuring a healthy weight. Without a doubt, first and foremost, I want to make sure that you are not carrying excess body weight or excess body fat. And then how can we make the diet help them out in that sense? I have seen individuals respond well to and this is purely anecdotal from my own experience. And if you know me, you know that I'm not an anti-carb or anything. I'm not one of those people. But I have seen individuals respond well to a lower carbohydrate. And let me be sure to say that it's not just lower carb, more so like lower starch and sugars and those things. And I'll see them respond really well. There's actually, a family member of mine that I helped with her nutrition, and she lost a significant amount of weight. She went on a lower carb approach to help her with losing weight, and as she got to a healthier weight, she also has RA, rheumatoid arthritis. Her rheumatologist took her off of medications and was like, you don't need it. You don't have the symptoms. I wasn't there to hear the conversation. I wish I would have been, but when she sent me that text message, I was all smiles, So there's potential in that. I think that in her case, it was more associated to you're eating better. You're being more conscious of what you're consuming. You're not over-consuming, which we know overeating can be one form of inflammation to the body. And she was losing weight. And she responded great.
Obesity and being overweight has more more ill effects than just what first comes to mind, right? When you think about it being unsightly or potentially leading to heart issues down the road, we're starting to see more and more variables are caused by being overweight or influenced by being overweight. Arthritis, productivity, it's all,
Yeah. There was actually I just gave a guest lecture, right? I was actually covering for a friend of mine who's a professor at FIU in the nutrition department, and it was an obesity lecture, and I was helping the students also understand, if they didn't already know, like you just said, all the comorbidities associated, because if you are obese now, you're more likely to develop type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, hypertension, stroke, hypercholesterolemia. I mean, the list goes on. And then to kind of segue into a more exercise related topic, I recently saw a study that showed that being sedentary is as dangerous and potentially more dangerous than actually having some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Some kind of like an illness or disease. So it's like, okay, we got to make sure that we're exercising, right? So come to Train 89 and get your workout in, and at the same time take care of your nutrition, because caloric deficit.
Yep.
I want to touch on something real quick that you had mentioned a couple times already, because you keep using the word, and I think that we've all gotten very good at this when it comes to saving our own asses, because you never say always or never, and you keep using the word "it could help you." And for the audience to understand that there's responders and there's non-responders, and some people are hyper-responders. When I was in college, I was a hyper-responder to creatine. I took it and it looked like I was on steroids because I gained so much weight and got so much stronger.
Not to be confused with a first responder, which is what your other profession is.
Which I just finished doing yesterday. So a responder, somebody that responds to the supplementation. Some people are responders, other people are non-responders, some people are hyper-responders. And then there's the placebo side of it. So you were talking about it when you said CBD oil. There's something to be said. If you believe this product works, if you were sold on it from a credible source, and you start taking it thinking this dosage of this product will reduce my pain or will make me stronger, so just that alone plays an important role, because who cares if it's actually because of the product, the mechanism of the product, or because it's in your mind. If it's working, it's working. So this is why sometimes people could take a glucosaminochondroitin and it doesn't do anything for them. One, obviously you got to check the dose and all that stuff, but two, maybe they're just not responding to that product. If they do respond to that product, is it the placebo effect, or is it actually reducing some sort of inflammation and helping them out with that? So I thought it was important to say that, because some folks could now turn around and maybe buy a product, or they've used a product and they say, I've taken creatine, it does nothing for me. Well, you're right. You're probably a non-responder to that individual product.
Yeah, and that's the example I always use in that case is myself with coffee. Coffee, I can have a huge cup of coffee, go right to sleep. Right. It does zero as far as energy goes for me. It does absolutely nothing. And then when you hit on the placebo part, it made me think of an old boss of mine who, let's just say, wasn't the most honest individual, really good at BSing people. And I remember one time this guy told me, because we were talking about selling supplements. At the time I was working with the company, and he was my boss, where we sold supplements, and he said, I don't care if the supplement works or not. If I can convince this person that it's good. Mind you, he wasn't like a doctor or anything reputable in that way, just really good BSer, which I didn't know at the time that he wasn't the most honest person. But anyway, I digress. And he said, if I can convince someone that this supplement is helping them, I don't care if it does or if it doesn't. Because me, obviously, when he said that, I'm like, wait, but you know the science, the studies, and whatever. No. Like, to him, he just wanted to sell.
Bottom line.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I understand where he was coming from, but that also helped me see the BS that's out there. This was a guy that I believed in, and now, fast forward to when he got fired, he turns out he was doing some very shady things in the company or whatever. But I mean, he had a point as far as the placebo effect.
Yeah, I would say so.
No, if someone thinks they're doing better,
right,
they are doing better. Is there something to be said there?
Right. Who am I to tell him to stop?
Exactly. Next one here shouldn't be that long. Shouldn't.
I tend to go down rabbit holes.
We all do.
This is not supplement related, which is good. Is there really a significant difference in nutrients in consuming raw veggies as opposed to cooked veggies?
Oh yeah, this one is not a long answer. Huge difference? No. Small difference? Yes. So there are certain vitamins that are lost when heated. Typically the water-soluble vitamins, so the B's and C. But I would say whatever comes down to preference. If you prefer cooking your food, then cook it up and don't worry so much about those minimal micronutrients that are going to be lost. If you're taking a good multivitamin, then great. If you're eating plenty of fruits and veggies as it is, then you're fine. But yeah, now to make the question a little bit longer, or the answer a little longer, for men, it actually benefits us to heat tomatoes because that activates the lycopene. Lycopene is what could potentially help our prostates. And now when we activate the lycopene in the tomato, it functions a little bit better in our body. So sometimes heating it is good, but I wouldn't stress that out too much.
Yeah, that's not going to make or break your diet. It's going to more be how many fruits and vegetables are you eating.
Yep.
Some cooking styles might be better at nutrient retention than others. I've always read, and kind of it makes sense to me conceptually, that if you're boiling your vegetables in a liquid and you're not consuming the liquid, that liquid's going to carry away a lot of the benefits. But at the end of the day, if you're still eating a lot of fruits and vegetables,
you're fine.
It doesn't matter if you're losing some of the, some of those phytonutrients that were in the kale that you just boiled.
Exactly.
Now, some stuff should be cooked if we're worried about maybe kidney stones, like on the kale topic. Cooking or sautéing kale or spinach will cause some of those calcites to break down a little bit, I believe, making, lowering that risk of kidney stones. But it's rather minimal. If you're just having kale or spinach once or twice a week, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And Rob is growing a beautiful veggie garden.
I am, yes.
In his backyard that he posts about constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So we could go there and get our veggies for free.
Absolutely.
Our non-GMO veggies.
Donations accepted.
With a jar.
All right. Now, probably one of our favorite questions.
I love this one.
What do I take to get huge?
Well, creatine is definitely going to be one supplement that could help weight gainers. Honestly, to get huge, it's really a matter of being able to consume enough food and enough nutrients. If you have access, I'm not, necessarily recommending that people do this, but just answering the question in a very black and white manner. If you have access to some kind of appetite stimulant, then hey, taking that because eating, as I'm sure you can vouch for, eating 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 calories is not easy.
It's a job.
Yeah.
What would be an appetite stimulant?
Well, in many cases, marijuana. So now, again, I'm not saying for people to do that, but that would be one way. There are also medications, right? So I know some people can get their hands on medications in some way, shape, or form that are actually marijuana-derived medications to help. Usually it's for like cancer patients or something like that to help stimulate their appetite. But if you are someone that really wants to get that appetite going, and maybe even foods that you think you have, or that that you have this preference for, eating more of those. These are little things,
It's a lot easier to overeat Oreos at 3 a.m. when you're trying to gain weight 100%. Than it is to overeat celery.
Amen to that.
Or overeat steak. I mean, you can only eat so much steak.
Yeah.
That's not going to be your answer. You're looking for calorically dense foods.
Yeah.
Right? And if we go down the hormone route a little bit, talk about what we have to get our hormones to put us in a position to grow. Easiest way there is illegal steroids. So steroids will make you huge. Steroids are not legal, so don't go that route. But they work. That's why they're banned. There's also a lot of negative health effects with it. But we can take that concept of what do steroids do? They put our body in hormonally in a position to repair better and recover better and grow more. What is a growth hormone? Insulin's a growth hormone. How can we get insulin up? Eating a lot of processed, crappy carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Right? So if you eat a high sugar diet, you're going to get big as well. But now if you pair that with an activity, you're going to get big, and it's going to generally be fat mass. So we can see, how do you take to get huge? If we're talking about athletically built huge, it's a little bit different. But if we're just saying huge, you start eating a lot of sugar and processed carbohydrates, that's going to raise your insulin levels. That's going to put your body in that position to want to get huge. Mass gain, think about a bodybuilder, they take insulin shots. But then they do a lot of weightlifting.
Yeah.
They do a lot of resistance training to build up the muscle mass. They're putting on. I would love to see how a bodybuilder potentially taking insulin shots and any other illegal hormones that they're doing. When they put on weight in mass building season, how much of that is fat mass versus how much of that is muscle mass? Because then we know that they're going to shred it back down, but what's the ratio there would be interesting. But they're saying, hey, if you're going to get big, you're probably going to put on some fat as well. If you're putting on strictly lean mass, that's going to be a very, very slow process, but it will be very metabolically healthy for you to try to go that route instead of just ballooning up to balloon back down.
Well, yeah, and you know, I've seen this in individuals that were heavy into some kind of steroids or, you know, some kind of illegal substance, and people think that just taking these things works the magic. No, you gotta take that and eat like an animal still, and train like an animal still, and try to keep consistent with that, right? Kind of back to your point, if you're able to do it in a much more controlled, legal manner, right, the results might be much longer. You might be able to achieve longevity as opposed to the guy that was training really hard, you know, was on the sauce, looked great, whatever.
Ronnie Coleman.
Ronnie Coleman. And then fast forward to them later on in life, and they're huge, they're obese. In Ronnie Coleman's case, he's not. He's still in great shape.
But what they did do is they sacrificed health for size.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
If your goals are huge in the sense that we're talking about, you know, bodybuilder huge, offensive lineman huge, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, the case of metabolic syndrome in professional athletes is massive when you're just looking at O-line and D-line. They're not they might be athletic, but they're not metabolically healthy. Some are.
Yep.
Some are now. We're seeing the freaks that are.
Oh, yeah.
But you still have that concept of the Leon Lett kind of D lineman that is not metabolically healthy. They've sacrificed their health for a multi-million-dollar paycheck, but also for their size, and you have to keep that in mind. That true mass gain is going to be difficult and might be unhealthy.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Anything to add, Mike, from your mass gaining careers?
I'm trying not to go down the rabbit hole here, but that's exactly my sentiments, is that even now at this age, still going on my mass gaining regimens, being 6'3", 215, I still look lean. I still look very thin, and I look better, and I feel much stronger at that 220, 225 range. I understand that I'm jeopardizing a little bit of my health, and definitely aesthetic-wise, when I'm gaining weight, I lose my abs. It's just comes with the territory, and I typically try to progressively over time increase my caloric intake from 2,900 to about 3,500, because I know that I'll put on some weight. Hopefully,
notice how you just said caloric intake and not just protein.
Right.
It's about more so about calories than protein.
Correct. And it's exactly to your point, is I realize that I need to start kind of teetering on that fine line of this is a food that I would not normally eat in order for me to have those calories. Call it cereal, if you will. You know, I enjoy my cereals, and I eat a lot more of it when I'm actually trying to gain weight, understanding that I probably wouldn't be doing this during my lean phase, if I will, or if I'm competing in some sort of competition that I want to be a little bit lighter for. But going back to my point is, in order to get huge, I think the first thing you need to look is caloric intake, and then think about the supplementation on the side. Creatine, I said it earlier, when I want to start gaining weight, boom, I started my creatine. I do my protein powders. I used to do my weight gaining powders. The Heavyweight Gainer 900 is something that I lived
Russian
off.
Bear 5000.
As much as you can get in college. It was loaded with sugar and carbohydrates and just a whole bunch of stuff. But it was all about the calories. I went from 7,000 calories when I was 22 years old. Now I'm about 3,000 calories. And if I don't pay attention to my diet, I'm the opposite. People hate me. If I don't pay attention to my calorie intake, I lose weight. Same. Because I eat, quote unquote, so healthy that it's not very caloric dense, that I'll lose weight and I'll end up sitting around 205. So I actually got to work in order to stay 220, if you will.
It's hard for me to stay above, like, to keep from losing weight.
Right.
It's difficult. And even still, working out, lifting heavy,
Right.
It's not easy.
But I eat a very satious diet with my high-fat diet, with my coffee. I do coffee about 3 or 4 cups before 1 p.m., and those two things decrease my appetite. And you were talking about it earlier, and Marinol is one of the drugs that they gave my mom when she had Parkinson's to increase her appetite, which I think is a derivative of marijuana, but just didn't get her high. So I have to completely focus the same way that somebody trying to lose weight has to focus on their diet in order to drop their calories. I have to focus to keep my calories up in order to gain that weight. So yes, I agree with you. Heavyweight gainers, if you're trying to get huge, and we're just talking mass, it doesn't. I don't care.
We can return on a later date and talk about healthy weight gain.
Right,
that's
correct.
a good topic.
Yeah, very good topic. But I would say the first and foremost is calories. Second, creatine. Protein, then coming down to my protein and how many, because now you're going to be gaining weight, so you might need to increase your protein intake, daily protein intake. And then it comes down to another factor, also comes down to sleep, which I don't want to get into but resting and taking those days off. So, this is definitely another podcast that we can get into.
So,
side of it.
Moving on. I'm actually going to start with this one because I'm going to take it down a different route, and then I know Erik and Mike, you guys will follow up with more of the general population. Top 5 supplements that work if there is even that many. So supplements that work.
Okay.
The first ones that I wrote down, coming from a sports performance side of things too, we have alcohol. Alcohol is a supplement, an ergogenic aid that will improve your exercise performance or your performance in certain events. I'm looking at archery as an Olympic sport, right? Some track and field people will have, before their race, will have some alcohol illegally, because it is an illegal ergogenic aid to have alcohol levels above a certain level for Olympic sports, because it will help calm you down, helps calm the nerves, will slow your heart rate a little bit, especially for your archery people, which on that, on the archery or the shooting point of view, beta blockers. All right, so beta blockers are what you give people who have high blood pressure because it slows their heart rate down. That is an illegal medication or illegal supplement for Olympic sports because it works. Cocaine, right, as a stimulant, illegal, absolutely, but a supplement that works that can improve sport performance, yeah, we know those stories of baseball players in the 80s and 90s, right? We're aware of that.
Cyclists, too. Cyclists back in the day.
Absolutely. Adderall, a very, very common supplement in MLB right now, is Adderall, especially for pitchers, because they have to stay focused, rock on focused for 3 hours.
For so long.
Right? So Adderall and other stimulants.
You didn't spit out the word illegal there.
It is.
It is illegal.
It is illegal. I believe so. I believe so.
All right. So MLB player, if they're prescribed that, do you know this? Are they able to get away with it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it would have to get through, because with some of my NFL guys, it has to go through a series of approval. The NFL doctor and, so on and so forth. Obviously, let's say, what I'm thinking of right now was more along the lines of like a testosterone enhancer with, let's say, any NFL guys that I worked with in the past, and not that they were very low, but maybe to get it up naturally. But there was nothing that I could give them. I wasn't going to tell them, hey, look, take DHEA that could potentially raise that, and also DHEA is on the banned substance list in the NFL. But yeah, it would have to go through some kind of like medical approval for them to be put on it, if at all.
And then to round out my quick list here, now stuff that works, caffeine is a very, very effective supplement. We talk about it as a essential part of our lives, except for Erik, who says he doesn't necessarily need it, which is very good of you. But caffeine will work as an appetite suppressor, will work as a stimulant, but also for endurance performance, we see tremendous benefits of it associated with glycogen sparing and decrease in RPE, so you are able to spare your glycogen for later in that race. So you're going to be able to use your more metabolically active energy sources later, and the race will not seem as difficult, which will allow you to push on a little bit if you supplement with caffeine for that race. That's why a lot of the gels that you get, those goo gels, are now paired with caffeine. And then to turn it over to you guys, creatine is a supplement that works most of the time. All right, so 5 supplements that work. Do we have 5? besides all those random one-off illegals
which are
that
quite
I
interesting,
mentioned.
Rob. I was going to say, key point here being illegal. I mean, except obviously for the alcohol and stuff. But you brought up some very good points that I don't think people even think of when it comes to sports performance. Of like, can these actual products or medications help me when it comes to that? You know, the alcohol. I've never even thought of track athletes taking a swig of some alcohol before they actually went to race, but I could totally see how that calms the nerves, puts them more in a better place, obviously without the impairment, if you will, to be able to stay in their lanes. It's something that probably in the dark world of sports is very known, but not in the lay public fitness realm.
If you want to know supplements that are potentially illegal, at least for organized sport that work, just look at the Olympics list of banned supplements. And that will be a list of all the ones that work. Some of them might be perfectly legal, like caffeine. It's just a certain level that you can't go over. Like beta blockers are legal, you just can't use them for sport performance.
Athletes,
but when we're talking about sport performance, there is a huge amount of stuff that works. They just are probably banned by the organization.
Yeah, and this person didn't even get into the actual what the goal is, because they just wrote top 5 supplements that work. They didn't say works for what type of thing. So sports performance, those are very good points. Erik, do you have, I mean, my top is creatine and protein. I always go with that, but then I always fall back into the macronutrients and calorie size. That's where I would loop in a protein supplement, if you will, if you need it. Creatine is the one only because it's been researched hundreds, if not thousands of times to show the efficacy behind it, and it's the one that I would always push. Where are you at with this, Erik?
It's conditional. So my list is kind of like, what's your goal, and of course your medical health background. But my quick list would be creatine without a doubt. Caffeine would also be on that list, and this is assuming that it's for some kind of sports performance. Creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine would also be on that list as well. A protein powder supplementation, and vitamin D. Okay. Those would be my 5 that I would include on the list. And again, they're conditional, because in my general supplements, I'm like, you know what, take omega-3, maybe a good multivitamin, vitamin D without a doubt. Like, it really depends who's asking. Assuming it's for that, it's going to be those 5: the creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine, protein powder supplementation, and vitamin D.
Yeah, I think it would be irresponsible if we didn't say that there's always follow-up questions to these types of questions. A lot of this, we're just assuming what road they're going down, and we're doing the best that we can to answer these questions.
Which is a perfect transition into the next question here, which is, do I really need supplements if I eat healthy whole foods? My goal is to stay functionally fit.
So for that individual, I would say yes. If your goal is to stay functionally fit, remember that supplements are supplemental to your diet. Food first. First and foremost, what's up with your diet and what are your goals? So supplements, they have their time and place. They're supplemental to the diet. They're not called replacements. They're not called instead ofs. They're called supplements for a reason. So one thing I also like to focus on is, instead of just being okay or within normal limits or something along those lines, why not go for optimal? Why be good when you could be great? And supplements help with that. If that's what they're saying, they said to be physically fit, something along those lines.
My goal is to stay functionally fit.
Functionally fit. So someone that asked me that, I would say yeah. I would say supplements would benefit you. You don't need them. Nobody ever technically needs supplements, but the caveat to that is there a deficiency, because if you're vitamin D deficient, take vitamin D without a doubt. Again, back to the methylated B complexes and those things. Need it? No. Would it benefit you? Yes. So I would say for your goal, you probably need it.
Yeah, which if you are really trying to dial in on what functionally fit might be, if you're trying to maximize functionally fit, that would be a good case of going to see a registered dietitian, where you will be doing blood work to see if there's anything that, even though you might be eating a whole food complete diet, that if from a macro point of view, not macronutrient, but from a macro point of view, checks all the boxes, but there might be something going on with your particular environment where you're going to need professional approach on that and say, hey, your vitamin D is low, even though you seem to be consuming enough vitamin D, getting out into the sun enough. There's still a lower level here. We need to do something about that.
And something else to think about is RDAs. recommended daily allowances and whatnot, or that's what the government suggests that we should take as on a percentage base. Now think of this.
I don't trust the government.
When you see these things, as far as the numbers go, in a nutrition facts label, it's going to say based on a 2,000 calorie diet.
For a typical human being who is a typical human being.
Yeah, exactly. So now the RDAs are also designed to prevent deficiencies, not seek optimization or optimization, whatever the word would be. I'm like making up words over here. But so we got to ask ourselves that. So it's like, okay, if I'm eating the world's perfect diet, in quotation marks, whatever the heck that looks like, you probably still need some kind of supplementation, because you more than likely will not reach the optimal amount of vitamin D, A, B, mineral X, Y, Z, whatever, no matter how well balanced your diet is.
All right. This is a good one. How do you even start? I'm saying healthy diet, I guess. How do you even start a healthy diet or weight loss program? There's no particular info here, but the question is, how do you even start when you have bad addiction to carbohydrates? How do you trick the body? Carbohydrates, my first question to you guys is, are carbohydrates addictive in nature? Right? Is sugar addictive in nature?
So what I've seen, again, based on the studies, is that the science is weak in that realm on humans as far as showing addiction. Now, if you look at the definition of addiction, if you really see someone who is addicted to something, we kind of have to ask ourselves, are they really addicted to sugar in this case? What we also come to find is that a lot of these quote-unquote addictive foods are not typically just sugar. You don't find people saying, man, I had to have my full tablespoon of raw table sugar and take it down. Generally speaking, it's mixed with something else. So let's say Oreos or donuts. Think of like Snickers or Reese's. It's usually sugar and fat. They're hyper palatable. They taste great. I say, if anything, they're not so much addictive. They just taste really good, and we just want more of it, right? That's like if you go on a ride and you enjoy the ride. Hey, let me go on the ride because I enjoyed it. I don't have to go on the Hulk in Island of Adventure or whatever park all the time. I'm not addicted to it. I enjoy it. Just like I enjoy my ice cream. That, side note, ice cream is sugar and fat. I might enjoy Oreos and milk, sugar and fat. Pizza, that's some kind of a starch, obviously, and fat. Like, it's usually a mix of those things. If you do think that you have some kind of an addiction, seek professional help. See a psychologist and a registered dietitian, and ideally they would be able to work together as a team to help you get over this supposed addiction. Now, generally speaking, I don't think that there really is an addiction. I think that there's just a preference for these foods because they taste so good.
Now, how do we work with, so now to the question here is how do we work with that individual who has a bad preference for carbohydrates? Their second question is, how do you trick the body? Is there a way to trick the body, or is this going to be, working slowly and finally producing the David sculpture?
So it would depend on the individual and their willingness to eliminate certain foods, because it's interesting to see how these quote unquote bad foods or sugary foods, how people respond to them. I've had people completely cut them out, and because they were able to do it, right? Which, side note, we can do anything we put our mind to, but that's another thing. So they were able to come off of it, and it was like, I don't know, 30 days or something along those lines, and they were like, my cravings are gone, this and that, whatever. I feel amazing. Then you have people that might not respond very well to that. If you take it away from me, I'm going to want it more. Okay, so the psychology there, let me not completely eliminate this. Let me not make them feel helpless in this sense where, you can still have this food that you enjoy, but have it in smaller amounts. So to this person, it depends what category you fall under. Can I do the all or nothing route, or will I work better with the having a little bit and then having some kind of self-restraint? And then you also have an immense amount of low sugar or low carb, because this person mentioned carb products. Now with the keto culture and all of these things, you have the Halo Top ice cream that's not very high in sugar, let's just say. It has some, yeah, sure. You even have the non-caloric sweeteners. You have the stevias and the Splendas and all of that, which, yes, they're not 100% natural. They're chemical and they're packaged and all this stuff. But what's your goal? Are you addicted to Coke? Try having a Diet Coke. Oh, I don't like Diet Coke. Well, then we're going to have to find another solution. Maybe you're not drinking enough water. Maybe you're not eating enough throughout the day. Maybe you're not getting enough protein. There's so many ways that we could answer this question that it really depends on the person. I would tell them, try having a diet or a sugar-free thing first to see how your body responds to that. And then, of course, moderation with all that.
I'm just going to add to this, and I think a lot of this, and I'm not downplaying any of the science behind this, but I think a lot of this comes down to the psyche side of it, and you spoke about it earlier. Maybe they need to work with a psychologist or psychiatrist, and work in conjunction with a coach or with a trainer. But when this gets presented to me as one of my personal clients or somebody that's a member of my gym, I always lean towards what you just said about willpower and us being stronger than what we actually are and just not tapping into that.
Yeah.
I actually know the person that asked this question here, and this is a person that I'm kind of close to, and I would actually turn around and be extremely hard on these people. It's just the way that I would coach and start being more of a motivational mentor than a fitness / nutrition coach, if you will. I would encourage them to seek out motivation. I would probably be on top of them every day with the texts and the you can do this and all that stuff. And sometimes I'm harsh and I'm a little bit more brutally harsh than I want to be.
But you measure that on depending on the person, I assume.
Correct. On what they respond to. Some people don't like my harsh personality when it comes to coaching them, if you will. Some people do respond well to that, and they almost need that. But a lot of this is psychological, and sometimes it's difficult for, I would just say, people like us, that I believe that we have a lot of willpower to understand or comprehend what somebody's going through when they say, I just can't do this, and not understanding that some people don't have the willpower or the drive to succeed that we have. And sometimes there's a bridge to close the gap on, this is how I could coach in order for you to see your results. So the tricking the body, that physiologically becomes experimental. I think they need to work on themselves on the mental aspect of it first, and you might need a coach or a motivational mentor in order to get you past that. But it's something that I would tell this person that maybe they need to take a step back and look at their life as a whole and say, this is something that I'm leaning on because I'm just not happy with the way that I look, but I am going to come up with 1,000 excuses why I look like this. I'm addicted to carbs, and that's the end goal. No, I can't because I'm addicted to carbs, where it's maybe a lot deeper than that. Maybe it's a self-esteem issue or, background. So I'm diving into a world that I'm not very knowledgeable in, because it's the psyche side of this. I think this person just needs a little bit more of a push. Obviously, everything going into taking into consideration, one, doing blood work like you say that you do, and looking at their maybe doing a 3-day food log and saying, hey, listen, you're overeating by 1,000 calories, so let's,
or not eating enough,
or not eating, exactly. So there's steps that need to take place, and I'll give you an example. 10 years ago or 12 years ago, when I first started the fire department, and I realized how long these days are going to be, I became addicted to coffee. That's when I found my love for coffee, and I was drinking my coffee with 6 Splendas. Then I started falling into the nutrition side of this, and I realized, damn, at best I might not just want to be having 6 Splendas 3 times a day. So let's start reducing this. So I slowly went from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to nothing. Now I drink my coffee completely black, and 10 years ago, I would tell you absolutely not. It's just too bitter. Now, if you put just half a teaspoon of sugar in this, or maybe some heavy cream, it's too sweet for me. So I've conditioned my palate, the way that I think, and everything that happens to me neurologically. When I drink coffee with anything other than it just being black coffee, I just can't tolerate it. So there's steps that you could take in order to scale up or scale down to get you to the point that you want to be. And that's, I think, where a lot of these folks, and she is not in the fitness world, so they struggle with this. They got a busy lifestyle. She's the mother of twins, so her focus isn't on fitness and nutrition. She just knows that she's quote unquote addicted to carbs. So a lot of these people need coaches. They need either a personal coach that, or they need to be a part of a gym that has group coaching to kind of lead them down the right path, and maybe just give them some education, which is part of the reason that we do this podcast.
Yeah.
Which clinically, I think would be really interesting to see where this research regarding extended fasting goes on, quote, tricking the body. Not going to be appropriate for everyone, might not work for a lot of people, might not end up going somewhere, but we do see that these extended fast periods are able to reduce insulin sensitivity. We're talking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days extended fast, so a ridiculously long period of time.
Bless them, man.
You know, mainly done with rats or C. elegans, which is a worm that we do studies on. But if there's anything to trick the body right now, that's where the research is going. Will it be successful? I think is exciting to see.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hold my breath, but
I would say that and keto also. Keto, people go on keto and it's like, oh, my cravings are gone.
Right.
Which keto is essentially a way of eating that mimics fasting from an insulin point of view.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right, guys, so there you have it. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Your feedback is extremely important to us, so please leave a comment under this social media post. We promise to read all the comments and answer all the questions. Remember, the louder the voice, the clearer the message. Thank you, guys.